citizens in West Balkan countries want to have quality news. Owners should not interfere in editor decision, but that in general is not the case, especially not in Western Balkans. So the transparency and ownership is very important. Now it's fake news era and a lot of spins and disinformation are in public. So that's why readers need to know who's behind this media.
To make objective and relevant news from Western Balkan countries isn't enough unless you have audience who can understand it. A consumer who can make difference between tabloids and serious journalism. This is the reason why media literacy is crucial. A news-savvy audience enhances a civic engagement, which in turn could have a strong impact on their everyday life.
Nowadays, the audiences have a bigger chance to engage directly and be part of the media process. Second advantage, especially for new media platforms, is that you're able to understand who your audience is, who they are, where they are, what they like, and how they like to engage with the media. And by partnering with our audiences, we can also get audiences to partially contribute financially and diversify sources of financing, which leads to increased independence as well.
It is very important to invest into building the capacities of journalists to interpret information, to put them into context, so the citizens understand the full picture and so that they can know who to hold accountable in the issues being reported.
Public broadcasting in Western Balkans should be released from political pressure. The public broadcasters should engage more with the citizens. They should create a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and they should pay attention to minorities.
We live in the era of misinformation, and the information is weaponized. It is targeting European values, and we must find a way to protect these values. And we can do this if European institutions find a way to create new programs that can support cooperation between investigative reporters from Western Balkan countries and EU member state countries.
Okay, so it's panel 2, media freedom as a key element of the accession process. I would like to invite my panelists to come back. Mr. Désir, please come back. Genoveva Ruiz Calavera, who you all know, who's in charge of Western Balkans, specifically at the European Commission. Klaus Schweighofer, Styria Media Group, who own important media outlets in Slovenia, Croatia, and Montenegro, and specifically actually Viesti, from which Olivera Lakic was attacked, and Katerina Sinadinovska from Kapital. Please come and sit down. Come and sit here. Okay. Genoveva, why don't you start? Since this is your conference, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, team, and good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you today. But it's a difficult call after Commissioner Hahn has already stated our views and our expectations of this sector and this region. Let me maybe put the context of freedom of media and media into the context of preparing these countries in the region for accession. And I think I should start with a fact. The fact that if you want to be a member state, you have to convince the members of the Union that you have a stable democracy. And without freedom of expression and without media freedom, there's no way you can demonstrate that you have a vibrant democracy. And that's why, like Commissioner said, when we are preparing countries for accession, looking into the state of the democracy from this point of view of freedom of media and freedom of speech is a fundamental aspect of preparing a country for accession. And we have two chapters that look at the sector from two different angles. One is the point of view of fundamental rights, that's what we call chapter 23 of a negotiation, and the other one is the chapter that deals with the rule of the law, chapter 24. And in any negotiation, you have to start opening those chapters as a signal that nothing else will progress unless there's progress in these two areas. And we have benchmarks, interim benchmarks, that continue putting focus on these areas, and we will not close negotiations until these two chapters are absolutely giving guarantees that the transformation the Commission was saying is real, it's not just in paper. So these two chapters set the pace, the rhythm of negotiations. And we have this so-called balance clause where the EU member states can, at all moments, decide to stop negotiations if they are not giving sufficient guarantees that transformation and progress is taking place. Why do we put so much emphasis in these two chapters? And just to give you an example, next week in Brussels, we will start preparations for a screening of this country, of Albania, of these two chapters. We will start the preparations for negotiations by starting explaining the EU acquis in these two chapters, and we're very happy that we're doing it to make sure that the ball starts running. But why is this so important? I would see three reasons why this is so important. And I'm going to say those three reasons from the point of view of a citizen of the EU member state. The first reason is that we believe that it's a fundamental right of our EU citizens to have access to quality information. Information that is, of course, objective, that is not biased, and that is free from undue political interference or any other vested interest. And we value the quality of the information we receive from the media because this is what makes us be able to take informed decisions on all the aspects that affect our daily lives or our future. The second reason is we also believe that the EU citizens have the right to transparency. Transparency is important because we want to exercise a scrutiny of public policies on the basis of solid and verifiable information, not speculation. And we want to exercise the scrutiny so that we can help our governments at all levels, whether it's the local governments, the national, the regional, or the supra-EU government level, accountable to us, to the citizens of the European Union. And third, we want to know that in the case there is wrongdoing, thanks to this scrutiny, either by individuals or by governments, we will have the right to remedy. And the remedy can be something as simple as an apology, or can be something as important as to put people behind bars, in jail. And that's where the rule of law, chapter 24, comes into the picture. There is no possibility for media to thrive in the countries if we don't have institutions that work effectively to provide guarantees of no impunity. If you look at these three reasons, which are important, of course, equally for the EU citizens, that for the citizens of this region, my message is crystal clear. There cannot be accession for any accession candidate if media freedom is not at the core of the transformation of the country. So media freedom is not an option for accession candidates. It's a fundamental criteria which is required to become an EU member state. Let me acknowledge what Tim Judah asked to the Commissioner. It's clear that in the European Union we have as well issues in the context of the respect of fundamental rights and rule of law. And that is why, if you see recently, the European Parliament has started what we call Article 7 procedures, which ask the Council, where all our member states take decision, to suspend voting rights to 2 member states which are not abiding sufficiently by the values and the principles in which the European Union is founded. So I would like that, that everybody understand, and in particular the governments of the countries in the region, make no mistake that the fact that we have problems in the European Union that we acknowledge is not excuse. On the contrary, it's an important reason, it's a very pressing reason for the countries to dedicate much more effort and much more resources to create conditions of credibility in the reforms that have to take place for achieve concrete and quantifiable and sustainable progress in this sector. There is no appetite by many member states that do abide by the rule of the law and that do respect the human rights to have future member states that not make us stronger but weaker in this area. So just I would like to put a message here on conviction. This is a process, like Commissioner has said, which is a very important process for the countries in the region, but as well for the European Union. And that's why it's a process that shouldn't create any room for thinking that there is complaisance about the standards we're going to be asking the countries that are wishing to be EU member states. I'm very happy, however, that today we're going to be discussing how to nurture a culture of media freedom, which is respected by politicians, which is respected by public servants, which is respected, of course, by journalists and by society at large. Because I am convinced that some of the lessons we are going to learn today, some of the suggestions we have heard right now, for instance, in the video, and we will hear from you, are going to be very useful, certainly for the region, certainly for me as a representative of EU institutions that need to help you to prepare for accession. But I am convinced for some of our EU member states. So I am looking forward to the discussions today, Tim, and thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Klaus, Schweighofer, we were talking about freedom of the media, attacks on journalists. One of them was somebody who works for you. I mean, that's one half of the story. The other half of the story is actually having a viable media. Is your media viable? What's happening in your field?
Thank you for this question. Actually, I think that's a very important topic when we talk about the freedom of media, to talk about the issues the media currently have, the traditional media, the journalism as a whole. There's a big attack by machines on the journalism, a big attack by algorithms, by the big global players. And we currently see media disappearing. Not just here in the region, but especially here in the region. In Slovenia, in Croatia, in Serbia, Bosnia, but also internationally, also in Austria, we see media disappearing. And I think when talking about the freedom of media and freedom of journalism, we have to talk about the economic background. And it's a high urgency. It's a really high urgency on this. I like to talk about startups and new ventures in the journalism, in the news segment. But I think the most important thing is what to do to keep the existing system. And we do have an existing system of excellent media and excellent journalism in the whole region. The most important thing is to immediately start, not just talking, but acting in supporting them. And it's really a kind of support program we need. Even in Austria, Austria's media industry is about 2 billion euro. Small country, but nevertheless 2 billion euro Austrian media industry. And even in Austria, we are alerted and we are seriously worried. We are seriously worried who can survive in this new global environment. We used to call it a new game. It's a new game on a global playing ground. And the competitors are Google with YouTube, it's Facebook, it's even Amazon, etc., etc. And I think this is the hottest topic currently. By fully confirming all the statements and by fully being aware about all the issues. You were mentioning we are one of the owners in the VSD, and we know what it means, yeah, to fight for the media freedom.
But could you talk about the viability of the media in Western Balkans, and perhaps yours in particular? Or maybe not yours in particular, I'm not asking for commercial secrets, but I'm just talking about the viability of media in Western Balkans. What do you think is going to happen if media...
First of all, I think we as the Styria Media Group, we are very strong in Croatia. You may know we are the owners of 24 Zata and Večernji List and Poslovni Dnevnik. And we have managed to make the step into the digital age, and we have a very strong revenue stream already on the digital side with the classifieds portal Njuškalo. And we're also very strong in the digital advertising, but nevertheless, constantly watching the situation, and the development is that all the revenues will further go down in the digital field. So it's still tough. Watching other markets, Slovenia, very critical, very critical for all the traditional media, very critical. Styria has decided no longer to invest in Slovenia in traditional media, very critical. In Bosnia, I think the situation is known. It's hard to survive there with the media business. Some manage, but I think many of the participants know how they manage. It's really hard and a tough fight. Serbian situation is well known. Big investor, René Springer, who supports, but some of the media companies really struggling, and then there comes the issue of the media freedom and of the independence. The more independent, the bigger the issues you have on the economic side as well. It was already mentioned today by one of the participants.
Sorry to carry on, but would you like to make a prediction of 5 years' time, the media scene in the business-wise in the region?
It's hard to predict, but I would say the other way around. Let's do all the efforts to keep as many alive as possible, as many as possible. But what we see is a speed that's incredible, and the speed is even increasing. And 2 years ago, we did even underestimate this speed of change and this speed of taking over by the big global players. And you have to be aware, this is not journalism, this is algorithm.
It's what, sorry?
Algorithm, machines.
Algorithm, okay, yes.
Algorithm.
Yes.
It's not journalism, it's algorithm. And this is the big threat, also for the society and for the governments.
Fine, okay. Well, over to you, Katerina Sinadinovska. You're the assistant editor-in-chief of Kapital. How does it look from here in Skopje?
Well, first, let me say that
just put it closer to you.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah.
I fully agree with...
But keep it just close, because we can't hear you otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I fully agree with this algorithm theory. It's completely true, and it's not journalism, let's face it. Macedonia became worldwide famous for this fake news phenomena during the elections in the USA and the campaign of Mr. Trump, when there were a group of teenagers in little town of Veles who were producing this fake news. We are not very famous about this popularity, but what was for me very interesting when I was analyzing this phenomena was one interview that was made by a colleague from BBC. She went there in Veles and she was talking with one of these guys, asking him if he feels guilty for what he did and the way how he and his group influenced in the elections in the United States. He said that he doesn't care about the US society. He doesn't care about who the president of the United States is going to be, and that the only thing that he cares is to make some money. And this is how we can define journalism today, to make money. And I think that this is a great defeat that we should face now as a professionalist, because journalism has to be something more than business. And in Macedonia, we all know how the last decade was we really struggled, and we survived a decade of high pressure, of media who were closed, of journalists who were under sanctions and who were pressured, and so on. Now we are facing another thing. You know what they say, that the chains of habits are, you are starting to feeling them in the moment when you are trying to make yourself free from them. So now we are in this kind of situation when we have to face responsibility. And Mr. Zbogar, in his opening remarks during the dinner yesterday, Mr. Ambassador, he said that when we look how all the governments in the regions are fighting in their open speeches, declarative for the media freedom, we can listen to them, but we can only see one look, just one look on the real conditions in the societies, because media are a reflection of the societies, and we can see which of the government are really dedicated to these processes and which of them are using fake news in building their PR images. And I just want to say that we should make a different approach of trying to find a solution. And for instance, stop to talk about the role of the government in these processes for a moment. I really do not believe in fully media-friendly government. So maybe we should take a look to ourselves. And what do we do as journalists, as media organizations, to fight this fake news phenomena, pressure, business conditions, and so on. And for example, in Macedonia, now we are discussing many processes in trying to reforming the country in the media sector. But what we are doing is we are discussing this with people who are directly involved into creating this catastrophe. And I think that it's time to be honest, and it's time to talk about the role of the journalism today. That's why I said this algorithm theory I liked, because we have to agree first, how do we see journalism today? How do we see responsibility of this profession, the role it should have in this, especially in this kind of societies, Western Balkans and so on. And having that image in mind, then we should build strategies. Because if we are not honest in this, I mean, I really do not want to sound pessimistic, but we have to be real and to know what kind of capacities we have in many fields, in the fields of ownership, in the fields of journalism. I can tell you one data. When I was studying in Macedonia, there were 130 colleagues of mine in my group for journalism. Now, in the faculty, there are only 5, 6, 12 students per year. It's a catastrophe. I mean, that lost trust in the media, in the journalism as a profession, it's a result of these processes. Media they had lost their basic function. I mean, in Macedonia, they have lost the function of cultivate, educate, and so to be funny, and so on. But the basic function to inform, it's what they've lost. And it's very dangerous, because you cannot allow for a society to have citizens who are not informed. So this kind of fake news, I think it's one of some colleagues in the questions, she said, it's just another name for propaganda. So I think that we should be honest in naming things. We should be honest in finding the crucial parts where, I think in different countries, the real parts who are enemies of these processes are different, and you can find them in different places. So we should be open, and we should talk directly, and we should see where the challenges are and what our biggest enemies are.
Fine. I think, Mr. Schweighofer, you wanted to come back to something.
Yes,
to
Katerina, just one slight remark on your very first statement of when saying now the journalism is more making money. What we have to be careful about, and I also used to start as a journalist, what we have to be very careful about is to be a journalist as an excuse for the economic principles. We have some basic economic principles, and those we also have to fulfill as the journalists. So we have to create a relevant audience. If we have no relevant audience, it's without any sense. And this is the very minimum we, as the Styria Media Group, expect from our journalists, to create a relevant audience. This can be a wide audience, it can be a targeted audience, but it needs to be relevant. That's very important, because the economic success finally will be the most important thing for the media freedom.
I agree. My comment was more in a way of misusing the profession as an alibi for making money. I mean, we are not talking about the real journalists here.
That's true, of course.
We are talking about people
Yep.
who are just into the profession, misusing it. So I fully agree to this.
Okay, just remember to talk close to the microphone, because otherwise the translators the interpreters can't hear you. Just one question before I'm going to come to Ms. Désir, is that for the rest of us who are not from Macedonia, how's the media scene like in the run-up to this referendum? Could you describe how the referendum is being reported and analysed in the media? Is it being done fairly? Is it being done properly? What's happening?
Yes, well, as I said, we were facing a decade without debates. We were maybe the only country in the region, in the Europe, where for 10 years we didn't, the Prime Minister didn't show up on TV debate. And now this is changed. So now, especially when the referendum is approaching, we are facing debates all the time. So all the medias are now focused on that, to have debate, to all the parts to take part of that public conversations. So in a manner of, are the all parts fully, do they have approach to the media? Yes, they do. They do, and that's good, because that's how the citizens should be informed about all the participants.
But there's full access for everybody? And especially in the state media, is there full access for the campaign against, for example?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They are in the debates. They are always present. They are explaining their positions and so on.
Fine.
Okay. Now we are in the campaign, so it's a different story. I mean.
All right, Mr. Désir, would you like to make a comment or to come in here before we open things up?
Well, first, just to say again how important it is that media freedom is a priority in the EU accession, because we know that this process is the engine for most of the reforms in the region. And it's clear that it's key for the future of democracy. There's a lot of countries where there is election but which are not a democracy, but there is no democracy without a free press. But it's not only the issue of free press, you're right. It's also that the quality of democracy has to do with the quality of information in a country, with the quality of the press. You need, and you don't need only one good newspaper, you need at least 2 or 3. That's a minimum. And we could say the same about TV, about radio. There should be a level playing thing of different actors which are competing on good quality of information and of discussion. And there we go to this economic environment. So we need the political environment, the legal environment, but also the economic environment. And it's very difficult because good journalism is costly. Investigative journalism, people who are well trained, the quality has a cost, while people can access to information freely through news feed. And less money is going to newspapers of journalists. So that's the issue. That's one of the very difficult aspects of this transition. It has a lot of positive effects, this digital shift, because we have seen the apparition of a lot of new online media, for example, BEARN for investigative journalism, and in many countries I've seen also how some of the legacy media, more traditional newspapers, have transformed themselves in groups with online edition, sometimes TV, but it's only a few. And if you have some intervention of the state, which instead of supporting this development, is trying to block it when they consider that this media group are not favorable by tax policies or hidden subsidies system with, for example, commercial advertisement, which is given only to some media and not others, it will be detrimental not only to the fairness of the development of the media, but just the possibility of the development of journalist media. That's a stake. What is the future of journalism? And how we consider that at a time, I think, where people are still interested in information, we could promote and make it possible for them to know that they can access to checked information, to quality information, not only to this news feed which is built by algorithm and which create bubbles of information in which you will only have that kind of information you're supposed to like and to love to get through. So that's a collective issue that we have to discuss, and how to promote it and how to encourage investors to come in the region, even if the market size is an issue, because I think that people are in wait of having this access to quality information.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, we've got time. Let's do what we did before. There's a lady at the back as the first hand I've seen. We've got plenty of time, so just remember to tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Samra Luchkin. I'm coming from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I wanted to ask Ms. Calavera and other participants at the panel something about the EU announcement and the concrete EU support to the development of business models of media. It has been announced by Commissioner Hans in Tirana last year, but now I would like to know more specifically about how this support will contribute to development of business models, and to ask other panelists to what extent this development of business model will release the economic pressure on media, since we cannot forget that economic pressures on media are equally heavy as political and all other pressures that we are facing throughout the region. Thank you.
Okay, next question, the gentleman over there. Yeah, Nick.
Good morning. My name is Patrice Schneider. I work for the Media Development Investment Fund. We are a mission-driven fund that has been investing in the Balkans for 20 years, sometimes alongside Styria Group and some of the most independent voices here. I have a question for Monsieur Désir. 2 points. Mr. Désir, when investors stand on a podium, people who are either interested for social reasons to invest in independent media or for corporate and social reasons like Styria Group, sound the alarm saying, this is really, really serious. We have a different ball game. That's point number one. Point number two is that, Mr. Désir, you've built your career on understanding civil society from the beginning till now. My question is very simple. On a scale to 1 to 5, with all your work and your position inside OSCE and your interlocuteur with the communities in Europe, what is the sense of urgency of this?
Sorry, could you just be a bit more specific? Urgency of what exactly?
Of the situation when investors start saying that the public debate is about to collapse, both in the Western Balkans, but pretty much more widely in the scope of Monsieur Désir. How much is there a sense of urgency about this versus infrastructure versus other things?
Fine. And
does that make sense?
Yes, but except 1 is the most urgent or 5 is the most urgent?
That is a good point.
Okay.
1 is not urgent, 5 is extremely urgent.
Okay, fine. Right, and then one more question then. Okay, the gentleman here, yeah.
I'm Željko from Viesti, from Montenegro. And this is very interesting question which Katerina opened and Klaus clarified very well about media between money and between professional reporting. And I think I just could add that problem, especially in this region, in media field and environment, even I could say the biggest threat is media who are not based on business model. And it is the biggest problem in Serbia, it is the biggest problem in Montenegro. Klaus said that in media business in Austria is 2 billion euro, in Montenegro is 10 million euro. And in Montenegro we have almost same number of daily newspaper like in Austria. That means conclusion could be that some media exist without any business model, and they exist because mafia or government or together they finance them and they support them. And that media is producer of fake news. They are covered and supported by governments, and it is the biggest problem. And my question could be what European Commission doing, or just doing watchdog and criticize and speak about transparency in ownership structure, even that everybody in Brussels or in Podgorica or in Serbia delegation knows who is behind some media, some daily newspaper, some TV station, and it is something completely brutally attacked of freedom of speech and professional media. Even that prime minister or presidents in this country speak a lot about fake news, but they are the biggest producer of fake news, like Putin in Russia, of course.
Okay, fine. So the first question was for you, Genoveva.
Thanks a lot, and I think it ties well with the last question on business models. I think when we discussed last year in Tirana, there was a constant that you raised to our attention, that there was difficulties for traditional media outlets to survive against those pressures that you have identified of vested interests which are financing certain outlets. And our discussions pointed to the need to diversify the media sector. And that's why in these media days this year, we have brought other sorts of sectors which have not traditionally engaged, like the young journalists, which are trying to open media outlets through the new platforms or through new vehicles. There is a clear interest on our side to work on three fronts, to work on, of course, like you said, quality has a cost, so helping the training of journalists which are capable to follow matters which are important for the countries to move towards the European Union. So, and those matters are not just political scandals. It's the situation of the environment, it's how they are advancing public procurement, where are the investments going, etc., etc. There is a need as well to educate public opinion, so they are more critical on what they are receiving and what is there. And we have a need as well to make media, and that's the part of this education as well, more competitive, because like Klaus said, at the end, what we need is content that is attractive, that the people are interested to read, that they feel that is worth paying for it. And in that context, of course, we have to discuss about finance, access to finance, so that resilience can be created. We're working on the state of the creations of guarantee systems that will allow the possibility to bring public and private funding together and ensure that more media outlets have access to that. We're working as well with the European Endowment for Democracy that we will be having here in the next panel to make sure that outlets that are at risk because of undue pressures can survive in a less visible. You know, all the accession funds that we provide to the media are visible, but we are protecting them through the endowment so that they can access as well to protection when needed. And we are very much vocal. I think we've been increasingly vocal both to the authorities of what's not going on well and when there are things that we don't like. I think it's important that we're vocal, but it's important that they resonate with you, because we cannot just change this landscape without having society at large resonate in these messages and make governments and journalists that are not being professional as well accountable for the situation in this sector.
But could you be more specific? There was that question also from Montenegro. What happens if it's mafia overlapped perhaps with parts of government which are actually doing the bad things that you refer to there?
In this case, I mean, the whole aspects of fighting organized crime and corruption under Chapter 24 is about that, for the media sector, for many other sectors. This is one of the areas where, I mean, if you look at the strategy of the Western Balkans that has been adopted in February, we have been very clear. This is one of the areas where we don't see enough progress in Montenegro or in many other places in this region, and where we want to have a much more, I wouldn't say intrusive, but much more intense engagement with authorities so that we can break those circles. I'll just give you an example. I mean, we are having a meeting, a ministerial meeting with the Ministers of Justice in Tirana on the 2nd and the 3rd of October. It's the first time that we're going to be discussing with the Minister of Justice the situation of the media sector. What is happening in terms of investigations, what is happening with the police, that are all the things we are discussing. I think the EU is now committed to make sure not just an issue we discuss here, but that we discuss as a cross-cutting issue across the board in all our engagement with authorities in the region.
Okay. Yes, but I was going to come back to Mr. Désir, but go ahead. Please, pick up there.
I would just like to add that I really like the question from the colleague from Viesti. That was the point we were trying to make here about the media who are surviving without any logical business model. So we all know what is behind that. That's why I will say again that we as journalists and we especially as media organizations, we have responsibility and duty to fight against this. I'm the president of Macedonian Council for Media Ethics. What we do now is together with the government, we are cooperating, we are working together to find a way how to locate this media and how to implement the laws in this process. So what I want to say is that this media and this fake media, these fake journalists, they're hiding usually behind the freedom of speech, they're hiding behind the, how can I say that, the power of a media to be protected from any kind of state intervention. This is not supposed to be happening. So we have to make a difference between what is hate speech, what is hate speech is a criminal act. I mean, what is freedom of speech, and we have to find a way how to locate which these media are, who are they, who are these people who are working there, and we have to interfere with the state, with the government in this fight together, because we need help as a media organizations with this.
Okay, there was a question for you specifically on a question of 1 to 5, how critical is the situation in the media, especially where we're talking business models and sustainability, viability, right?
In terms of economic sustainability, I think there is a very high urgency. It's clear. So if we have to put it on a scale, I would rather put it at the top of the scale as a number 5 urgency. If we look at the global situation, first it depends on the country, the countries. Second, as it was stated before in our address, very often the legislation in itself is good, but the problem is implementation. And on the economic side, you cannot just look at the legislation regarding media freedom, but you must look at the way competition policy, for example, or subsidies are used on the market of the information. And so we go to this issue of the investors in media. What Mihajlo Jovovic from Vigesti says is something we see everywhere, where investors, in fact, are like political or vested interests who wants to control the media for other goals, for political goals, or to get a leverage on the government, to get access to public procurement and things like that. And on the other side, there is also investors who are interested in the media activity. For many reasons, either they are local investors or international investors which believe in this business. But it's very difficult if you don't have a culture of understanding that it's a special business. So it needs investors, but it needs investors who understand that it's an activity which has to be mainly managed by journalists. It's like if you invest in medicines. It's clear that health can be seen by some people as a business, but it's not only a business. There is, of course, a lot of public rules. And also, it's not because you own an hospital that you will decide instead of the doctors or the people, will there be a surgery or not? It's up to the doctors to decide, ultimately, even if you are the owners. And it is a little bit of the same in newspaper. You can think that it's important to invest in newspaper and television, but you must admit that ultimately there will be some kind of firewall between you as the owners, the investors, and the newsroom. And you have to respect and to accept that it is as it is. You have to ensure that there will be the better capability to get the good journalists to develop their activities so that they can compete with the other and they can provide to the public some kind of things which will interest the public. But we think that the public is interested in reporting, in information, in debate. But you have to accept that kind of separation. In some countries there is foundations, there is different kinds of way to ensure this, but it's of course very much difficult to create it in a little market and in a fraction market like the region. But I think that there are investors who are here in the region or who could come from abroad. There is journalists, but we must create the legal frameworks, the economic rules, and the political environment which will allow the development of this press industry.
Okay, once again, let me just come back to you, Mr. Schweighofer. You've said how critical this situation is. Does that mean that you're going to stop investing, or do you think you could expand? I don't think you're in Serbia, for example, and that's the biggest country in the region. Do you think that you could invest in Serbia, for example, or this is not the moment?
Well, may I just add one comment on the urgency and on this scale from 1 to 5? I would say it's even 6. It's not 5, it's even 6.
Okay.
Coming back to your question, of course we are here to invest, and of course we also see from a business perspective the kind of opportunity, seeing a really heavily suffering industry, and on the other side having some of the right answers already proven in some of our markets. So of course, we are interested, and I think it's not a big secret that Styria, and actually Styria International, that I'm currently heading, is searching for investment opportunities. We are searching in the region, but not for all means. I also tell you, not for all means. I was mentioning Slovenia. Slovenia, the traditional media situation has become very, very critical from the business aspect.
Okay, so yes, although it's 6, you're still looking for stuff. Okay, as far as I understood. Okay, fine, great. Right. Yes, come back, please. It's fine. Just
to comment something what Ms. Calavera answered to my question. Basically, she didn't answer. And she said something what is very dangerous. She said that the European Commission cannot be judge. Nobody asked European Commission to be judge, because if somebody said that means that there is 2 sides. One side is government, and other side is some bastards from independent media who are doing investigative reporting, writing about organized crime, corruption, something like that. No. European Commission should defend 2 things. One is freedom of speech, because it is milestone of European democracy and Western democracy. And second, you should protect environment for professional media. How? For example, I will give you one idea. Judge who organized harassment against investigative journalists by judiciary verdict against them or against media, you should put them on the list like Russian, these guys from Russia, under sanctions. They cannot move from Montenegro. Their members of families cannot move. People who organize campaign against politicians. Now we had, as you know, in Montenegro, they destroy public service. People in parliament who adopted and completely realize that idea, they should be on that list. under the sanctions of European Commission or European Union or United States. We already had that experience in Albania because American ambassador in Albania is very active. But in Montenegro or Serbia, we still don't have that situation. And there are many other ways how European Commission can do something to protect these two milestones, not to be judged between, because we are not side, we are just doing our job.
Okay, well, fine. Like, well, just one second. That was specifically directed to you there. You can't be neutral in these situations. That's so.
I regret that I was misunderstood. I don't think we are very neutral. When you look at our annual reports every year, even though I acknowledge that our language is very administrative and very bureaucratic, we're assessing the situation of the media and we're touching on these issues. And if you realize that, we've been extremely critical, for instance, on the situation of Montenegro regarding the public broadcaster, and we've been very outspoken, and we have been as well regretted, for instance, that two of the journalists from the public broadcaster that were invited couldn't come. So we are aware that we have serious problems, and we are making those problems be known to your authorities and certainly to the public. I think we are in this together. What my message was, we have to work together. And it cannot be something that is only thinking that we will resolve overnight. These are very difficult issues. They require a lot of commitment on everybody's side. And I fully agree with one thing you said. We are not here to create mistrust, because if we want investment, what we need is confidence. Confidence that there is willingness to solve these problems. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, please.
Yeah, just commenting on the statement of my fellow friend Željko Ivanović from Viesti. You know, Styria is stakeholder in the Viesti. And you know about the attack we had this year on Oliveira. I think what we all need to be aware of is that we have an ally, and the ally is the Commission, and it's especially Commissioner Hahn. I may really say this, and also thank you for this big support you and your team gave to us, to Viesti, on this event, because it was unique, and it was the first time ever that there was a very, very clear message to the government and to the authorities. Of course, it's never enough, yeah, of course. But really, I want to share this with you, with all the participants. You have a very, very strong ally, and I have never experienced this sensitiveness for the topic. Never ever. I have experienced this in Brussels. And please take the chance. Of course, there always needs to be done more, or there could be done more. But it has been a big step already done. And really, Commissioner, thank you very much for this. Please keep on supporting, pushing, and even more.
Okay, right. Who's next? Gentleman there, and then there's two at the back. But let's start with gentleman here.
Yes, hello, my name is Laurent Gélin, I'm working for Le Courrier des Balkans. I got a question to Mr. Schweighofer, and it's a very simple question. Which are your interests to invest in Balkans? The market is small, economic situation is tough, so can you give us your secret? Why do you invest here? And is it possible to be profitable making journalism in Balkans?
Okay, there was a gentleman there, yeah, he's got the microphone, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Mogens Blicher-Bjerregaard, President of the European Federation of Journalists. When we talk about media freedom, we are standing on two legs. The one which is addressed really much today about safety of journalists and fighting impunity. The second leg is what, and thanks to Harlem Désir for mentioning that, for drawing attention to it. This is about the working conditions for journalists. I've been traveling these countries many times, visiting our organizations, our unions, and what they are really struggling about is decent working conditions. Sometimes they even don't get their payment. This is a big problem, and we have to solve that, because if we don't solve this, we can continue struggling, because it's vulnerable for journalism if they don't get paid for what they're doing. So my question is to, when we have Klaus Schweighofer here today, and I'm very happy that you have that, because you also mentioned the need of good of the economy, of the good financial business models, etc. Would it be possible now? Should we do it now? Make an agreement, go together, stick together, enforce the social dialogue, And do it, if you're going to invest in the Balkans, do it together with social dialogue so we get decent working conditions for journalists, because before you get that, forget about having real media freedom, because journalists will go to other things, they will make the money on other ways. The only way is if they get a good pay for it. We made an agreement, and I'm very proud of that we made an agreement with the European publishers on the copyright directive, agreeing on Article 11, sharing the revenues coming from that. The next step should now be to have real social dialogue in the Balkans. So you can go in front and be a key factor for that. That would be great, and we will be engaged in that, I can promise you. Thank you.
Okay, and a third question. Yep, gentleman there.
Hello, my name is...
No, sorry. You come in the next round. Yeah, go ahead.
Remzi Lani from Tirana, Albanian Media Institute. When you read the progress reports that the EU Commission published, the key word rightly has been rule of law. But when we talk on media, basically we tend to see it from the angle of freedom, media freedom. I believe that the problem in the Balkans is that we don't have rule of law in the media sector. The media sector is in a Darwinistic situation, Darwinistic status, in my opinion, where the media laws are not actually implemented and respected. The laws affecting media, like competition law, bankruptcy laws, are not respected. And basically, you have a situation where instead of freedom, you have the illusion of freedom, because I believe that without rule of law, freedom is not real. I think it's time to see the media freedom in the Balkans more from the angle of rule of law. The problem of freedom in our countries is not how to have more, but how to have less. Because instead of pluralism, I believe we have cacophony, and instead of freedom, we have noise. And somehow we are in the grounds of relativism with fake news, which are quite widely spread. And it's time, I think, I might be wrong, but to change a bit the approach, how we see freedom, media freedom in our region. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm just going to keep it at those three, and then I'll come back for the next question. So, first question was, why invest and do you make money? And then there was a bit more to social dialogue, etc.
Yeah. I don't know whether everybody is so familiar with the Styria and its history. We have a pretty long history. Our roots go to the 19th century. Actually, we are just to celebrate our 150th anniversary. And actually, the mission of Styria has always been to support the independent journalism and the free speech. And again, this roots in the 19th century. And this is still our mission. You may know that some of the big publishers, even in Germany, have already decided no longer do this. We have decided to stay in our core business because we believe in the journalism. And we see that it can work. It can work, but it will work far harder. This we also see. That's why we do all the efforts currently to improve our business models, but also to improve the quality standards of our journalism. And I think this is also very important for you. It's a new game, and it's a new game of the toughest competition you can face. That's the global competition. It's for most of the industry, by the way. Just have a look at the retail being attacked by Amazon. So we know that it's achievable, but we also know that we have to improve, and we have to provide even a higher standard of journalism.
But he asked whether you could make money. And
yes, of course. We are a corporation. We are a corporation. We are owned by a foundation, but we are a corporation, and we have to deliver. We have to deliver. And you may know that we are very strong in Croatia. Even in the deepest crisis, when we saw other media companies going bankrupt or even disappearing, we managed to deliver a certain level of the profit, with the high efforts of all the people involved, and but it works.
Okay, there was a question about social dialogue for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we are the right ones for this. First of all, whenever we talk about media and entering a market, it's first of all a business decision. I have to say. So we have no funds to support. On the other hand, we have some investments such as Viesti, and Jelko was mentioning last year in Tirana. So far, we haven't received a single cent from this investment, and nevertheless, we stay in. Even in a situation like that, we have to stay in. But first of all, of course, we are cooperation, and the basic decision always needs to be a business decision.
Okay, Remzi Lani was talking about the fact that there's too much media, and a lot of it is basically rubbish and is not contributing to general well-being and well-informed population, but it's just making a lot of noise. Does somebody want to pick up on that? Maybe, Katerina, you haven't had a chance to speak too much. Maybe it's the same in Macedonia, I don't know.
I'm sorry?
Perhaps I said perhaps it's the same in Macedonia. I mean, I don't know, that often there may be too much media, a lot of media just making a lot of noise and not contributing very much to...
Yes, I think that that's the definition about making noise. The guy there said about rule of law, and how can we talk about media freedom without it? That's exactly what I was saying when I said that we have to deal with these noisemakers. And we need the implementations of law. We have law. I mean, the implementation is a problem. And in Macedonia, also what Mr. said about the responsibility of having a media, of being an owner of a media. You have to be aware that you're not an owner of some factory for shoes or something. And in Macedonia, that was the key problem, because the main owners, media owners, are for example, they were supporting the previous government for 10 years, and the very next day the government changed, they changed their political views. The very next day, shamelessly, I mean. And I'm talking about the mainstream media, the biggest TV stations, the most influenced ones. And that's how do they see the journalism. That's why I started with the speech about the role of journalism in the society.
There was a question about conditions for journalists and journalists not being paid.
Yes, I mean, we are really struggling. Now we have a situation when this business model, when we are attached to the government, this government, the new government, they stopped all the commercials and advertising in the media, and the previous one was the whole base of how the media were functioning was on that segment. So now, without the advertising from the government, without really media markets, medias are really struggling, and the conditions are salaries are low, and pressure is still there, and for me it's really a big problem. The whole vision that you're supposed to be in favor of the authorities as a journalist. So we have really damaged perception of what freedom of media should mean.
All right, does anybody else want to pick up? Otherwise I'm going to go to a next round of questions. Okay, gentleman there. Oh, sorry, you already started, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Maciej Orłowski. I'm from Gazeta Wyborcza in Poland. I have a question to Mrs. Katerina about the fake news and about upcoming referendum. This topic appeared during the last session of questions, but I want to come back to it. Do you notice any fake news connected with upcoming referendum, and which goal is to influence to this referendum? Because we know that we had that situation in the past in other countries. We know all the case of the Russian influence in the American elections, and I want to ask if something similar happened here in Macedonia, maybe in the social media, maybe another media.
Okay, so there was somebody at the... Okay, that lady there, yeah, because I saw you before. Okay, and then I saw somebody over there, but please, yeah? Could you put it a bit closer because we can't hear you? Just put it close to your mouth. I think it's not working.
Thank you. Milica Pešić, Media Diversity Institute, London. Of course, my question is related to diversity, particularly for gentlemen who come from commercial companies. You're talking about market, you're talking about business. European Union used to have studies which show that diversifying the content can broaden the audience, thus maybe bring more profit. Do you have any proofs that that's possible? And if so, how do you use more diversity and encourage people to bring diversity? And for Mr. Désir, the same question. It's not just about freedom of media, it's freedom of expression. Where is diversity in your activities?
Could you just be a bit more clear? What sort of diversity are you talking about? Just
diversifying the content, being more inclusive, bringing voices from different backgrounds, from race, ethnicity, gender, disability. Does that bring then new audience, thus new profit? Thank you.
Okay, and there was a third question. Sorry, okay, I saw you before. I'll come to you in the next round. Yeah, please.
Okay. I'm Nishvan Svahiu from TV Mitrovica, Kosovo. It is obvious the most recent and biggest media freedom enemy is media cacophony. So my question would be, does any of you has any idea how to fight this enemy? I mean, enemy of media freedom, or more, how to say, more accurate, enemy to the media mission. If I need to explain what means media cacophony in the region, let me explain. I mean,
yes, go ahead. I think it sounds a bit like what Remzi Lani was saying about noise, but
it
let's be a bit more specific.
Very related. I think the same.
Go ahead.
For example, now, before, when some media had expressed a true or investigated something, the government or the mafia, they assaulted on that media, so in a different ways. But now, they have much more, how to say, sophisticated means to fight the media freedom or to fight the truth. They're creating plenty of media, they're owning those media, and if any of the media finding some scandal or telling some truth that is inconvenient for the government, then those plenty of media created by they creating a cacophony. They creating another stories in order just to hidden the voice of the truth or the scandal or whatever. So this is the media cacophony, which is, I think, present all over the country, so the Western Balkans.
If you're from TV Mitrovica,
yes.
You said, could you like to give an example, a recent example from Mitrovica?
Oh, there are plenty of examples. I don't want to bore this, but
just give us one example. What type of? Okay, not necessarily. If you don't want to do that now, no problem. Okay, so
I don't want to take your time, but I mean that's my problem is whether somebody has an idea how to fight this, because this phenomenon this phenomenon is not only in Kosovo; it's all over the Western Balkans.
Okay,
and maybe wider. I would like to see, for example, some Austrian experience on that, or Western countries' experience.
Fine. Fake news in the referendum. That was a question for you, and then questions about diversity. But let's start with you. The fake news in the referendum campaign.
Yes, the Prime Minister Zoran Zaev was very careful
previously
locating the influence. So you're asking me to be more concrete, okay? I can talk about numbers. As president of the managing board in the Council of Media Ethics, I can say that now we are facing the number of complaints from the citizens against the articles referring the referendum and fake news is rising. So yes, I think that there is bigger presence of fake news, which is, expected because we are in a campaign now and so on. If we talk about locating the center of this propaganda and the creators of fake news, I think that we should wait maybe for investigative stories that are going on. Colleagues of mine are working on this, and they're very serious colleagues, investigative reporters who are working on the stories about locating the centers who are spreading this kind of propaganda. And I think what we should do is working on media literacy in this area. And then people have now really what we lost as a journalist is our main responsibility to present accurate news and checked news. And now, as a citizen, normal people, what they do, they're reading something and they have to reread, to open 10 other medias just to be sure what is the truth. Okay. And this is something we cannot allow. I mean, it's not, we have to rebuild the trust again. And this is how, with this process of building this media literacy, we should
okay,
work on.
Fine. Diversity. That was kind of directed at you?
Basically, of course, it's part of professional journalism, if you ask me. But, and that's the economic, but just if it creates an added value. Yeah, so we are back with my basic statement that also the journalism has to follow the economic basics. And that's why diversity, not just for the diversity reason, but diversity for the quality and surplus reason.
Fine, that was addressed to you as well?
Yes, that's right, that we are also entitled to monitor freedom of expression at large, not only freedom of the media, even if, of course, cannot go without freedom of the media, especially online now. I think that to give a say to diverse sector of the society is a duty for all media, including for mainstream media. Of course, there must also be some support and help for the development of new kind of media. But I think also that there is a special duty for the public service broadcaster. In many of the countries of the region, there is already provision in their charter or contract about ethnic minority, about languages, about region, but it's broader. And so that's part of what public service has to bring in the media landscape, to do an effort to try to ensure that whole the society will have a place, especially on TV and radio, of course, and that there is a lot of means which are dedicated to this, because there is less the pressure of the market. Here, it is the society who gives to this public service the duty to work on reflecting on the diversity, and so the public service has to lead in many sense. I would also like to see the public service to lead in terms of respect for political pluralism, for equity in terms of treating the different political parties, and that's very important also for the future. And it goes also with independence of the board, of the newsroom, and so on. So it's diversity in all the sense.
All right. Then the colleague from Mitrovica was asking about this issue of real news being drowned out by, as he called it, the cacophony, or as Remzilani called it, noise. Can anything be done about it, or is this just a fact of life that we have to live with? I don't know if anyone wants to pick that up.
I think, referring to the question how to fight, we do not fight anybody. Yeah, we try to attract, and I think that's the only chance to use this even chance. This might even create exactly the field for your professional journalism. A media system like that, and I think there's no chance to fight it. You can just be better, and you can just prove that it needs to be done differently.
This must be something that on your agenda, where at least public broadcasters become party broadcasters, you still have to deal with those parties because they're in power. How do you kind of strike the balance between these are the people in power and they have to be dealt with, and these are the people abusing the media in certain countries?
This is possibly one of the biggest challenges we still have ahead when we see the state of the public broadcasters. And that's why I think one way to deal with it, we're trying to deal, is to put some order in the public in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability of the appointments in the public broadcasters, in terms of scrutiny on their statements, on their affiliations. There is a lot to do still in this area, and that's why public broadcasters are one of the areas that are receiving significant EU assistance so that we can have a grip on how we make them evolve in that direction. But if you allow me, Tim, I think it's important to acknowledge what our Remzi from Albania said. You know, the problem in this sector is not regulation. We have a lot of laws which looks, or they are compatible to the EU. The problem is implementation. And that's why Commissioner Hahn was saying this is no longer, the process of accession is no longer ticking boxes of how many laws are compatible. It's how are we implementing them and how are we contributing to transforming the context on the ground. Bankruptcy laws, public procurement, competition laws. That is the challenge that we have ahead. How do we move from this appearance of everything is under control to the realities on the ground? And in that respect, first, we have to thank the role of the journalists to raise those issues to the attention of the authorities, of the populations, of course, of the institutions. And we have to continue working together, the private sector, all the institutions which are relevant in this field to make change. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge that, yes, there's a lot of cacophony. I don't have a recipe how to do. I mean, I can see that a lot of times what the journalists in the region do is come back to the European Union, ask our spokespersons what's our opinion, and this is probably a result of that. They have trust that we will be giving an honest assessment and an honest opinion. Sometimes there are issues we don't comment, because of course we don't comment on comments, we don't comment on many issues. But many times when I see the amount of public statements that we're doing every day, we are trying to contribute to avoid cacophony in the region. Thank you.
Okay, let's have three more questions. Milka Tadic there from Montenegro, and then there's a lady there and a lady at the back. Sorry, this gentleman here also, but Milka Tadic first, please, the microphone.
Thank you, Tim.
Hang on, put it up, yeah, close to you.
Okay, I think the main...
I think it's not working. Is the microphone working?
Is it okay now?
Put it close to you.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I think the major actually problem is what our colleague Ramzi said. Actually, in these countries, there is no implementation of the rule of law. On one hand, we have now a free market economy, and we have a monopoly in media field, and as Željko said, we do not know who is actually investing in some media which are just propaganda for the ruling circus, business and mafia. On the other hand, we have judiciary which is actually undermining freedom of media and independent media. We all know about the impunity of those who attack Oliveira and the others in these countries. And just in the last couple of years, our media, I mean free media, those media who are not controlled by the ruling coalition and the ruling circus, paid hundreds of thousands of euros for defamation. And yes, we have as well charges and even criminal charges against journalists, as Jovo Martinovic is, who spent 40 months in prison, against those journalists who are not controlled by the ruling circus. So I think if we do not have implementation of the rule of law, how can we actually have freedom of media, and how actually we can have free market economy? And only if we have all of this, we can have free media.
Okay, thank you. The gentleman there, and I missed him earlier on.
Thank you. My name is Ilir Gashi. I'm an independent media expert from Belgrade. I would first like to thank for the very encouraging messages we've heard in the opening session. I have several questions. One is a question concerning the structure of participants, namely, all those messages seem like messages that would be appreciated by the politicians. Most of the journalists here know the connection between democracy and freedom of media. It's the politicians that we need to get involved in these discussions. So my question to the organizer is, as much as we appreciate the opportunity to be here at the conference, is there a plan to make something similar to this that would include politicians from the region? And would the quality of message that will be sent be equally strong? Because that's what's very important to us.
So I don't quite understand the question. The question is what exactly?
If there is a way of including politicians in this debate, because it's like talking about the third guy who is not there.
Okay, no, fine. Okay, okay, fine. Great. Okay, come on to the next question. Lady there, yeah.
Hi, I'm Leila Bichakis from the Center for Investigative Reporting in Bosnia and Herzegovina. My question is related to the commercial interest of the investors. If we know that the Western Balkan is very much controlled by the politics and that most of the commercial possibilities are in hands or decided by the politicians, including the advertising market, which is shrinking basically, and if we have investors who are mainly interested in the commercial commercial interests are coming as a priority for their investments in the media sector, how do we balance out those two? Because I see that as a quite a big challenge in terms of the respecting professional standards and respecting the media freedom, particularly in the countries with a very poor rule of law as Western Balkan countries. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 3 questions there. The last question, perhaps that was one for you, sorry. That was perhaps one for you, the balance of the commercial interests and the public interests. Did you hear that, or do you want to repeat that one?
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about that. It's tough. It's a tough situation. You were explaining the situation. It is like you are explaining, and that's why investing in Bosnia is a tough topic. Nevertheless, we are watching. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not only Bosnia. We are
That's
talking
true.
about Croatia as a very politically problematic country. We are talking, and it's an EU country. We are talking about you were talking about spreading to Serbia. Serbia is also very problematic. So it's not Bosnia. I wasn't asking about Bosnia investment.
That's true. That's true. It's sensitive. Yes. I think it's not too much to add on your statement. It's sensitive. It's very sensitive.
Okay, there was the Genoveva Milka Tadic's question. Basically, there's no rule of law, as far as I understood it. I mean, in summary, no rule of law, therefore there can't be a free media in Montenegro, and yet Commissioner Hahn said Montenegro, I think it was Commissioner Hahn, said Montenegro was the leader. Maybe I'm wrong. Did you say Montenegro was a leader? Somebody said it was. Somebody said Montenegro was still the leader in terms of European integration. It's a frontrunner and a risk. Okay, would you like to kind of respond to that question?
I think it's, well, first of all, I understood the Commissioner comment in a more critical way, to say that even in Montenegro, as a front-runner, or so-called a front-runner, we're not satisfied with the progress that Montenegro is making in this field. And I think what is important to understand in the negotiation process is that one worry we should have is that it's not about opening chapters, it's about closing chapters, when we will have the possibility to have the structural changes we want to see so the countries can close. So you can be a front-runner from the point of view of ticking as well boxes and numbers, so many chapters open. But this is meaningless unless we can close them. And for closing them, we need to have those sort of transformations, including the rule of the law. We can only agree with what we're saying here, and I have to say it's almost a satisfaction to know how like-minded we are. When we are in the European Union saying fundamental first, so the fundamentals for the country to coming to the European Union is the rule of the law, is having public administration that functions so that can deliver to the citizens, is of course having thriving democracies which have freedom of expression and media freedom, and then of course creating conducive conditions for economies so that there can be growth for their populations, that they can be able to resist, of course, the competitive pressures of being a member state. And then having all the rest of the laws that we have sector by sector in the European Union, because if you are a member, you have to abide. But fundamental first, it starts with rule of the law and democratic principles. So this is what we are talking today. And when you look at the report that we do every year, and when you look that we have not yet even agreed on the Montenegro's achieving the intermediate benchmarks on Chapter 24, we all agree that we still have a lot to do ahead of us. And I mean, on Belgrade comment, I think, this is of course up to Commissioner Hahn, that is the one that had devised this forum as a way to have the capacity to get you out of your countries and have the possibility to talk to us in a more free and free from prejudice environment. And that's why we haven't got politicians here. But we are encouraging that your politicians, that your governments talk to you in your countries. And I think this is a different sort of seminar we want to have. We want to have this possibility. I write a lot of your comments. Don't consider that we don't take it into account. It will really guide our work after this conference. But when we don't have them here, it's just to give the possibility to be outspoken and to be politically incorrect like you are. I mean, with us, because we need that. This is what we need in order to help you. At the same time, of course, we ask your government to take a serious discussion on the new media strategy for Belgrade, and we hope, we really look forward them to engage in the last request you have done on the letter with the 13 points. So I think we are trying to maintain these two levels of engagement at national level, but as well creating the space for us to be able to be very comfortable. For instance, what I said about Montenegro, that I don't feel we are yet ready to close benchmarks. And I don't want to have here 20 minutes conversations that yes, we are, because that's not the spirit of what we want to have here. I'm not sure if Commissioner Hahn agrees, but this is how I would see the value of this conference. Thank you.
Maybe you'd like to respond to some of that, or not particularly? No? Okay, well, you're going to come back later on. Okay, fine. Right, there's a lady there, and the lady there. Fine. Let's start with the lady at the back, because she had her hand up for ages. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. My name is Borka Rudic. I'm coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Association of BA Journalists. I have one simple and very important question for the Mr. from Styria group. How you see protection of labor rights in media under Styria group in Balkan Western countries? Have you same level protection, labor rights and social condition for the journalists in Western Balkan countries and other countries, other European countries? Please answer very precisely and concrete to my questions.
This sounds like, sorry, before you sit down, it sounds like there's something that you're referring to there, which maybe the rest of us are not aware of. What are you referring to, something in particular?
All the time we're talking about making business.
Yeah.
I would like to know strategy of Styria Group to protect journalist rights as a main condition for the credible and public-oriented journalism in our countries. It's the main question. We have a lot of problems with protection journalist rights under working of media company. Right. If you talk about public interest and quality of journalism, we must to talk about protection journalist rights, open social dialogue and protection conditions for the working of the journalist in media outlets.
Okay, fine. The next question, the lady there.
Anita Andonova, Public Service, MTV1. One colleague of mine...
From which country? From here?
Macedonia,
okay.
MTV1. One colleague of mine once said that we are trying to play piano with cotton fingers. Do you think that it's easy to play a role of public service without support of the society, government, and citizens, and all the subjects that are included?
Could you be a bit more specific? I mean, this is quite ambiguous question.
Do you think that it's easy to play without support, without regulation, good regulation, and with everything? That it's need to be a real public service, not by us, not by the staff that work in the public service.
Okay, and the third question? Yeah, sorry, there's a lady there. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello to everyone. Radka Becheva from the European Broadcasting Union. I would like to reflect on a question from the podium, which was about how to combine public interest and commercial interest. And I have just a suggestion to Commissioner Hahn for next discussion to include on the podium also a representative from the European Broadcasting Union, which is, as we all know, Association of Public Service Media in Europe. And the dialogue could be balanced because in Europe, as we all know, we have a dual system where how we actually balance the commercial and the public interest. That's why we have public service media in Europe and we have also commercial media. However, I would like also to, this was my suggestion to include also the head of the European Broadcasting Union in such debates. And my question to Mr. Schweighofer is, he several times rightly mentioned a new game. And it is indeed a new game because we have Amazon, we have Google, we have big giants investing more and more in content. So do we have a strategy how we protect actually our European production, our European work, and also our pluralism? Now I look at pluralism from another angle because I think that without pluralism, our democracy, which is anyway at stake these times in Europe, is threatened. So do we have a strategy?
Okay,
how we
fine. Okay, great. Well, there were two questions directed to you. Do we have a strategy to combat the new game, first of all, and a question about labor rights?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I got the point on this question, but as far as I understood, the question is whether Styria treats its journalists the same back at home in Austria and here in the region, and here I can tell you that's a clear yes. And of course we follow all the regulatories, of course, but on the other hand we also had to do a lot of restructuring both here in the Balkans and back at home in Austria. But we also have one basic principle: whenever we do this, we always do more for the people than we would be obliged to do.
Okay, then there was a question of the strategy for the new game. What's your strategy?
It's a good question.
Yes, it's a good question. What's the answer?
Question.
Is there an answer?
Of course there is an answer, and of course there is a strategy, but it's not that easy. I think one of the basic things is we have to stop doing the routine and we have to change. We have a new situation creates new needs, and I think that's the most important thing. We all, especially the journalists, have to be aware of this new competition, and I think I already said we have to further increase and constantly increase our quality and the level of the work we deliver. It's tough. It's a very tough situation, and I would love to have it more convenient, but it's the situation. But of course, there is a chance, and I would fully agree that the public service should also be present here, because I think they have to play a relevant role. Just back at home in Austria, we are just discussing whether the public broadcaster ORF should or has to play a relevant role in this change process as a kind of anchor in these stormy times.
Okay, question, would you like to pick that up, Mr. Désir, especially the one about public service without support? Is that on your radar?
Yes, of course. I think public service has a very, very important role. They are also very often in need of restructuring because the transformation has been very strong in TV since 20 years. and sometimes the internal structure of the public service broadcaster has not changed so much. So it's not easy. There's a need to invest in training, in digitalization. The switch over to digital transmission has been sometimes very difficult, very, very painful. But it's needed to have a balanced media landscape. It's clear, to have a strong public service broadcaster. On labor rights, yes, I think it's very important. I've heard in many countries how journalists are sometimes paid only 2 or 3 months after working, very poorly paid, no social protection. That's a part of the issue. It's not simple to solve, but I think that it could be, and it has to be part also of the wider discussion with the state. For example, we are discussing about state heads, the reform of state heads in certain countries to avoid too much political interference, but at the same time, perhaps there should be also clear commitments by the media owners to respect social rights. That's also a part of the stabilization and the promotion of quality journalism. The issue of transparency of ownership, of respect for rule of law, the economic part also of the rule of law, which have an impact on the media sphere. This is absolutely important now. And I would say that such conference, for me, is very useful as the one we organize ourselves, because first we take a lot of information, of advice, and I think also because it's public, it gives a strength to the views which are discussed. And so I will not say that because politicians are not in all of the panel, they will not are aware or heard about what has been discussed here. And anyway, for us as an institution, it's clear that it's a support to the kind of interventions that we have to do toward the governments after the rest of the year, after the conference. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if either of you two would like to pick up on those questions. Maybe not. Okay, fine. Let's. Okay, there's a lady over there, and that lady over there as well. Yeah, go ahead. If you've got the microphone already, go ahead.
Yeah, I have. Hello, I am Elida Zulbari, editor-in-chief of Portal, media in Macedonia. I would like to ask the EU what does it do to enhance the fight, to uprise the media literacy, as we all agree that one of elements of fighting disinformation is to invest in media literacy. So, and also what do commercial media do? I mean, for the minister I have the same question. So please tell us, how can we see EU in action fighting and giving much on this fight?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Tamara Filipovic. I'm coming from Serbia, Independent Journalists Association of Serbia, and I have a question for Mr. Klaus. Do you have trade unions in your media outlets, and in which country do you have it, if you have it?
Okay, and the third question, lady there.
Hello, my name is Fationa Medini from Albania Center for Quality Journalism. I want to ask the EU about what they have done so far about legal protection or legal aid for journalists. As Commissioner Hahn said, that we have rising cases of journalists being assaulted, but on the other hand, we sometimes find that journalists are alone in their battle for their right. Have you ever thought about creating kind of a fund for legal aid or some other forms of protection? Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we start with you, Genoveva? There was like media literacy. What are you doing? And have you thought of putting money into legal aid for journalists in trouble?
Thank you very much, because both are very important questions. First, yes, we are working on media literacy across the region. We've been working together with the UN, with the UNESCO, in order to enhance media literacy, and we are aiming to extend our program by the end of the year, so we have more coverage and more outreach. And we will be, of course, providing details to all of you when the program is up and running, so that you can benefit from it. You make a very important point about legal aid. We have a very particular program of the European Union, which is the European Initiative for Democratization and Human Rights, which is all about civil society and human rights defending. And when journalists are under attack, they can benefit as well from this program. We have schemes of legal aid for all people. We have the possibility to use those instruments to help. Last but not least, I would like to come back on issues of regional cooperation, because I think it's very important that we look at the region we have similar problems, and that's why we're trying to work not only in each country but as well with programs that link journalists and link initiatives at regional level, so that you can share not only concerns but as well best practice, so that we can be as well stronger in making the message pass to the authorities. And in this context, I think we have this idea now of how can we link those regional networks with European networks, and we will reflect, this is the proposal that came in this video, how can we go into a step in that additional direction. Thank you.
So I didn't quite understand. It just sounded like you were saying that there is money available for legal aid.
We have schemes of legal aid already ongoing, and there's legal aid for different segments of societies, but in particular to protect human rights defendants and, of course, journalists.
But is that only within the EU, or does that extend to the Western Balkan states as well?
This is for all our partners, not outside the EU.
Not outside the EU?
No, outside the EU.
Oh, it is for outside. Well, it obviously exists then. Well, maybe it needs to be publicized then, if there was a question. Okay, a question for you. Do you have trade unions in a Styria group?
We have definitely...
Microphone, yes.
We have definitely a workers' council in most of the companies, and yeah, actually it's the standard. But we also have some companies not having workers' council and or union present. The younger companies tend not to have it. But I think it doesn't make a big difference, because anyhow, from the management side, you have to care for your people, and if your people like their job, they will do a great job. So that's our basic belief on that. But in general, yes, of course we have.
Okay, do you want to pick up on those questions of media literacy, and what does that mean in real terms? Go ahead.
I think it's a key question, because there was remarks about cacophonia,
yes.
the fact that we are facing fake news, which is a term we all know cannot be a very good base for designing policies, because it makes political interference, sometimes international meddling in the situation of another country, but fake news can also be because people just reproduce fake information for silly reason, or because they believe in it, because they just don't care about truth. But it's a reality that we will not anymore, I think, live in a situation where there was a kiosk, and of course you had a lot of title, but you could think that most of them were dedicated to present sincerely their vision of the truth, while if you go to a bar, you will hear a lot of silly things, and you will be clearly making the difference between what you hear on the street, what you hear among drunk person, and what you see in the press. No, now all is mixed, all is arriving at the same screen, your telephone, and so media literacy, of course, is key, because we must live in this reality where you have to debunk fake news. So what is important is that there is real and quality news existing, check news, made by professional journalism. So that's why we must support this quality journalism, these professional standards, this code of ethics, and the sustainability of the press. And on the other side, we must help people, especially young people, to exercise their critical thinking, so that they understand that a video or a text or anything is not to be took for truth. And we know that video are more and more successful on screen. That's why YouTube, for example, is so successful. And we know that it will be more and more easy to do false video, false audio. You will not be able to distinguish between what here panelists are saying and what on a video they will be saying, even if it will be just fabricated. So yes, this issue is absolutely key for the future.
Go ahead.
Definitely, I agree completely. There are two processes. One, investing in content, in good quality of the news, and the other is media literacy. But also I want to put an aspect of the education here. We also should do this with the universities, with the education process as well, especially in societies and in states when people are not well educated and where politics is also interfering with the education process. So I think the education is also very important.
Okay. Did you want to come back on that?
Just to add to that, it's nothing we should just leave with the governments and institutions. It's also a basic must for us as the media companies to work on this. And we have started inviting schools, students to our newsroom. And for one example, in our headquarters in Graz, it's about 7,000 to 10,000 students between the age 10, 15 who give a visit to this newsroom per year.
Wow.
Per year.
Okay.
We have to work on this,
Great.
especially on the next generation.
Okay, well, look, we're now drifting towards the end. I think we've got time for one or two more questions. But is someone really desperate that I've missed out? There's got to be somebody. Oh, yeah, it's okay. There's two ladies right at the back, and then that's it. Okay, go ahead. No, we can't hear you. No.
Now, Arista Zuka, ABC News Albania. I have a question on the use of the term self-censorship in the reports of the European Commission or other organizations like OSCE. Do you know how many phone calls, indirect messages, or direct messages journalists or editor-in-chiefs in most of the Balkan countries receive every day from the governments or local authorities to remove parts of their reports or to change their reports completely? So is that self-censorship or rather sophisticated censorship? Because it's too much focus on that in the reports, and since we are talking about how to make sure that those governments release the political pressure on media, what's the roadmap that you have as a European Commission or OSCE in order to make sure that those governments give guarantees to protect rights of journalists and working conditions of journalists? Thank you.
Did you get those messages on your? Do you get messages?
Sorry?
Do you get these messages?
I get this message, but by those messages have to be directed to the government. So you have concrete actors. You have governments, you have owners of the media, and you have unions. So do we have a roadmap now, from the European Commission or OSCE with the actors, ministers in charge, owners of the media, unions in every country to make sure that they give those guarantees in order that rights of journalists be protected, and also the...
What I meant was, do you get messages telling you to take stuff down?
Well, my colleagues receive it every day, but they don't dare to say it because they are afraid to lose their job.
And
this is reality in every country of the Balkans.
What do they do? Do they take the stuff down, or what do they do?
Well, they change the report.
They do? Okay,
yes.
Fine. Then the lady next door to you. Oh, you don't want to ask a question? Fine. Okay, we've got one more. No? No? Okay. Fine. Perhaps that's one for you.
Well, it's clear that there's a lot of way of pressure on the press. There is sometimes direct intimidation, direct censorship, threat to cut public advertisement, for example. There is also the fact that some owners of media use just the media to get some kind of advantage from the government. So they will, by nature, be very sensible to the demands of the government not to publish an investigation and things like that. But there's also the whole effect, even on journalists who will not receive directly a phone call, and you're right that this is unacceptable, but sometimes, even without that direct interference, journalists will be afraid or will don't feel free or comfortable about publishing an investigation, because when one of your colleagues has been directly attacked, has been threatened, has received a bullet like Oliver Halakic in Montenegro, you can think twice before publishing. And there's also the question, it's not only in the region. We have seen what happens in Malta with the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia, or the assassination of Jan Kuciak in Slovakia with his fiancée. You have sometimes little groups of journalists or single journalists investigating. And here, people could think that they could stop them. So it's also a kind of message sent to all the journalists who can, in a newsroom, but by themselves, think they could look to a track or try to investigate on something. So it's a very sensitive issue. It's clear that any kind of pressure of that kind is unacceptable for the development of a free press. It's also very important to increase the solidarity among the journalists across the lines of the media, across the border of countries, to ensure that whatever happens, they will continue. The investigation will continue. The publication will continue. It's also why I think it's very important to have that kind of dynamic of meeting at the level of the whole region. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah,
I would just like to add that, how they say, you can kill the journalist, you can kill the story. The examples she said were pure examples of censorship. It's not self-censorship. When we are talking about self-censorships, I can mention, for example, I'm writing an editorial or I'm guest in some TV show, and after that I'm getting the messages, me personally, I'm talking for me, not from the centers of political or business power, but from the regular citizens who can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, or wherever, and they say that I'm a national traitor, that I'm a whole hate speech they're spreading against me. And that's how I can maybe feel some instinct for self-censorship. And in Macedonia, I don't know, maybe 1 month ago, there was first case open against hate speech. Okay. This is the result of hate speech. So now we are going back to the key element, and that's the rule of law.
Okay,
and that's how we should.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to say anything before we close? Yes, please, go ahead.
Thanks very much, and thanks for everybody here for the very relevant questions for all of us to reflect on the way ahead. Yes, we have a roadmap. The roadmap is the preparation of the countries of this region for accession to the European Union. And in that roadmap, we are working together, of course, with international organizations, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, with civil society, with journalists, with private and private sector. And we're together in this boat, and we are certainly together, need to continue working very closely, because the more we prepare these countries for that perspective of being a member state, the more that roadmap you're asking for will be realized. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was a very exhaustive panel. We've covered a huge amount of ground, and I don't know if you, maybe at the back, you don't know that Mr. Hahn's right here in the front, so he's heard everything. It's interesting that last year that there was a protest by Serbian journalists, and Serbian journalists have been quite almost notable by their absence, in contrast to the Montenegrins and Bosnians, especially today. But, well, that's the way it's been. Thank you very much. And don't move. I'm going to invite Connie back because she's got some housekeeping for us.
Well, I'd like to invite you for a round of applause, both for the audience, your questions, and for everybody who was up here on stage. Absolutely in depth, and I know that all of you want either a coffee or want to go off for lunch. Don't worry, I'm not going to keep you way too long. Thank you very much, Tim. We're going to see you tomorrow morning. You may have noticed, or you may not have noticed, that there is a lady working away. I'd just like to draw your attention to that very briefly. Caroline is actually doing something which is called a visual recording. She's actually sort of following the narrative as it spins out here on stage, and she probably has a look at the breakout sessions that are going to happen later on. So you can actually, and if we have a close-up of her painting, you can actually sort of already see sort of the revolver hit at the word truth, and the truth doesn't exist anymore afterwards. So that's just one of the aspects, but there's also a plan, so their hope is also already on the board. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have a lot of work today, and I did not just say and promise that it was going to be interactive. It's going to be even more interactive this afternoon. 2.5 hours. Everybody can attend one of the workshops. They have been well prepared by your colleagues of up to 7 people on stage. You're going to be back in one of the workshops. Now, the workshops are all taking place on the level below, i.e. on the first floor of the Marriott. After those 2.5 hours, ladies and gentlemen, your work is not for nothing. It's all going to be played back tomorrow here in the audience hall, and then we have something new. We have lightning talks, i.e. very quick highlights, 15 minutes interventions on, for example, investigative reporting as maybe a means of fighting corruption. We have new cooperation that's going to be presented, and of course one of the issues here today is how do you get young journalists to buy into ethics, and maybe how to achieve a cross-border understanding. That's also going to be part and parcel. So I just hope I've made you a bit curious about what's going to happen later on. Last point for today in this audience hall is going to be a very interesting performance. It's the title, Disability, a Matter of Perception. I would like to invite you to come here. Now, I'm still not finished, because we're going to have, after all of this work, we're going to have a really, really great evening. We have a beautiful invitation to go to the Skopje Museum of Contemporary Art. And everything that you knew up to now was we go to the museum. Actually, that's changed. So for those of you who are completely exhausted and who do not want to move, they can actually take a bus from the Marriott to the museum. However, seeing that it's such beautiful weather, you might actually want to move your body, because afterwards your brain will work even better for all the conversations that you're going to have in the evening. So I would like to encourage you to take your belongings with you, because when you come back to the audience here, to the audience hall here, this will be changed. So you may not find your belongings at the spot that you've left it. So now, do enjoy your lunchtime, do enjoy your conversations, and maybe, thank you very much. Yes, and please, okay, last piece of housekeeping, please return the translation, the interpretation devices. Thank you.